Hey, this is C&D channel. I'm Chris. This is MMA for you. I'm going to be doing my post-fight analysis for UFC on Fox 9, Johnson versus Benavidez 2. Overall, I liked the card despite the fact that it had a lot of decisions. None of the fights really bored me or anything like that. I mean, there were some fights that were just alright, but I didn't find that too many fights to be particularly bad. There out of 11 fights, there are only 3 finishes. A couple upsets here and there on the undercard. As far as my picks go, didn't do too bad. 7 out of 11. I missed a lot of the prelim fights, like Abel Trujillo versus Bowling, Alf Oscilic versus Darren Yanayama, Bobby Green, Pat Healy, and Zach Mikowski, Scott Jorgensen. Got all the other ones right, though. As far as bonuses go, Demetrius Johnson got knockout of the night. Faber got submission of the night. And Barboza and Edson Barboza and Danny Castillo got fight of the night honors. One thing to note, I read the stat in the comment section, so I don't know if it's true, if this number is actually correct or not, if it's a little more or a little less, but Team Alpha Male is 0-8 in their last 8 Zuffa title fights. Faber is 0-5 in his last title fights. That's including the first Mike Brown fight, the second Mike Brown fight, the Dominic Cruz fight, the Renan Barão fight, and the Jose Aldo fight. Yeah, that sounds about right. 0-2 for Benavidez. I think it's actually 0-3 because you might even count Cruz Benavidez, number 2, and then the 2 Demetrius Johnson fights. And Mendes is 0-1 because he lost to Jose Aldo. Not to take away from the camp, though. They are one of the best MMA camps in the world. I am not of the opinion that to be an elite camp, they have to have at least one UFC champion in the camp. I don't believe that. ATT actually, to my knowledge, never had a UFC champ. They're one of the tops of the world. Cesar Gracie, with the Diaz brothers, Melendez. I mean, they had the Strikeforce titles, but they never won the UFC title. But I still feel they're an elite camp, regardless. So it's just an interesting stat more than anything else. These are still really good guys, nonetheless. So yeah, let's get started. Demetrius Johnson beat Joseph Benavidez by knockout 2 minutes and 8 seconds in the first round. Dude, there are fighters on Twitter that didn't see this KO coming, and nor did most MMA fans see this one coming. I thought Johnson would win, not by knockout in the first round. That was so out of nowhere. He is getting a fair amount of criticism for the extra punches that he gave to Benavidez. I've never actually been one to truly critique that, because one guy was saying it was that you're now putting the onus on the fighter to stop the fight, instead of the ref, and then that's not even to include just emotion and adrenaline, it's you're punching dudes in the face. It's the job until the ref stops it. I'm actually of the opinion of the criticism shouldn't go to the fighters because he's not exactly in a state of mind to not to fight. It's very, to me, this idea that they should have the mentality to somehow be able to stop the fight should be with all fighters. Machida can do it, Brian Stan can do it, and it's Yeah, some fighters can, and some fighters can't. I mean, I do really attribute it to heat of the moment, personally. I know a lot of people disagree with that, but for me, it's, yeah, heat of the moment for sure. Once the ref stops it, and if the guy keeps going, then yeah, then we have problems. But if the ref didn't stop it, in this case too, man, Johnson's so fast. I mean, those, 4, 5, 6 extra punches were coming so fast. Dude, Big John was not stopping that. This is the first time that Joseph Benavidez has been finished. Heck, this might be the first time I've seen him dropped. I don't know if I've ever seen the guy dropped. And as long as Johnson is flyweight champion, I mean, you gotta think that Joseph Benavidez is now in something of a limbo in the flyweight division, He's lost twice to the champ. And the second time was a KO. I mean, what can you really say? The guy's, until he loses the title or something happens, I mean, he's just kind of stuck in limbo for now. Also, from what I'm reading too, a lot of people are starting to come around with talks about Demetrius Johnson being in how high he is in the pound for pound discussion. It's all hypothetical, totally subjective. Some people are saying he should be number 1 and whatnot, or at least in the top 3. It's tough to say. It's just up to the person there. As far as who should fight next, I mean, Lineker, if he can make weight, would have been the next logical choice. Ali Bagutinov is coming off a good win over Tim Elliott. And he's an interesting challenge for him with a sambo background and heavy hands. There's also the winner of Pickett versus McCall. That would be pretty cool. Seeing a third fight between Ian McCall and Demetrius Johnson wouldn't be too bad. And Pickett has some. He's the only guy. Not the only guy. He's one of the only guys to ever beat Demetrius Johnson. So that would be interesting as well. Then you got a guy like Zach Makovsky. It's not going to take too many wins for that guy to get a title shot. So yeah, there's definitely some flyweights out there that can, will probably get a title shot soon. And, I'd favor Demetrius Johnson to beat all of these guys. It's just that it's just that these guys do present unique challenges to him nonetheless. But I do feel that Demetrius, stand-up wise, is better than a lot of guys. Wrestling wise, is a lot better than pretty much like almost everyone in the division. As far as Benavidez, who he should get next, I mean, he tends to beat most guys. I would say maybe you can give him a Scott Jorgensen if you want to do that. The loser of McCall versus Pickett. But the only problem with that is that he's already beaten Ian McCall. Benavidez versus John Dodson is a really cool fight that I'd really like to see as well. So there's good fights for Benavidez, but one of the problems with him is that he's going to knock off contenders. I mean, if he fights John Lineker, I can see him losing. I can see Lineker losing. Bagutinov, I can see Benavidez beating him too. So he's definitely got to fight guys that may have already lost to Demetrius Johnson, John Moraga, and guys like that. Or guys that are just kind of like dangerous, but no one knows, that may not sniff a title shot or something like that. Kind of sucks to be in Benavidez's position right now. Really good fighter, one of the best flyweights out there. pretty much stuck in limbo up to this point. Yeah, next fight after that, Uriah Faber beat Michael McDonald by guillotine choke in the second round. You gotta say, I mean, Uriah Faber has great killer instinct. He sniffs blood. And it's kind of cool when you see this finish. It's actually not that dissimilar to when he finished like Brian Bowles. I think he uppercutted him, dropped him, went for that same guillotine choke in that same manner too, in that same setup. You know, he has a lot of different ways of finishing guys. He finished like Jorgensen and Ivan Menjivar by rear naked choke. And yeah, he just has really good killer instinct. It should be really interesting that Faber did beat Michael McDonald in the stand-up. I think a lot of that can be attributed to Michael McDonald defending the takedowns, keeping his hands low as well, trying to defend the takedowns. But nonetheless, yeah, Faber doing better in the stand-up than McDonald. And McDonald's a really tough guy, you know. Really good, really strong opposition to beat. And it just goes to show that Faber beats pretty much everyone but the champions. I think Faber should get the winner of Cruz versus Burrell. I mean, he's been finishing all of his opponents up to this point, and they're all really strong opposition. There's no other fight, to be honest, that I'd like to see him in at 135 at this point, except to get the winner of Cruz versus Burrell. Do I think he beats any of those guys? Probably not Burrell. Maybe Cruz. I'd still favor Cruz, but he is coming off the knee surgery, so you never know how he's going to perform. As far as Michael McDonald goes, I mean, he's already fought Burrell. Still 22 years old. I think he should get like a Yuri Alcantara, or maybe the loser of Eddie Wineland versus Yves Dubuin. But yeah, still good fighter. Only 22 years old. Well-rounded. So, but yeah, you know, Faber's just a tough fight for anyone. Next one is that Chad Mendes beat Nick Lentz by unanimous decision. Dana White was tweeting that Chad Mendes had like either the flu or the cold. Kind of showed in his performance, actually. One thing that was making me really angry about this, or somewhat frustrated, was Joe Rogan. And he keeps going on about like, oh, when Chad Mendes gets on top of his opponents, he's usually pounding them out. It's like, no, that's not true. That's not true at all. When he went up against, forgot his name, Javier Mendez, kind of just laid on him. Even Hani Yaya, you know, just kind of laid on him. I know he kind of lay and prayed Cub Swanson. He's not much of a ground and pound guy. He's a guy that disrupts a fighter's like rhythm and momentum by utilizing takedowns, but he doesn't really do much with them. His top control isn't the greatest. His stand-up is very good. His problem is his output is very low. So it's not uncommon to see Chad Mendes not strike in combination. As much as Joe Rogan was saying otherwise, I mean, his fights have actually shown that he's not always the most more of a combination puncher. He's not much of a ground and pound guy, and he's shown it in a good amount of his fights as well. Regardless, he beat Nick Lentz, who's like a fringe top 10 guy. He has a good win streak going on. I think that he should get the winner of Aldo versus Lamas. If not, the next best guy he can get is a rematch against Cub Swanson. With Nick Lentz, he can get like the loser of Alkins versus Jeremy Stevens or something like that. So, I mean, there's good fights for him. He's kind of a grinder. I can't ever see... I can see him making truly making the top 10, but not being, like... I don't know if he can really stay there. Can't ever really see him fight for the title, though. Good one for Mendes, considering he had the flu and the cold. I mean, Nick Lentz is a good wrestler, and he took him down pretty easily. Except in the third, when Mendes looked pretty bad. Outstruck him, too. So, I mean, it's good stuff for Mendes, and the way he looked, I mean, he didn't look that great, too, and I actually believe that he had some sort of sickness coming into the fight, because he just didn't look that great in this fight. Okay, next fight on the main card, Joe Lozon beat Mac Danzig by unanimous decision. Interesting stat with this fight, this is the first decision win in Joe Lozon's MMA career. He's finished in his wins, he's always had a finish. I mean, he's lost decisions, but he's never won a decision. Which is pretty incredible, considering how many fights he's had in the UFC. I think with Danzig, he might be cut from the promotion, though. I mean, the guy just isn't the most winning fighter. Even though he's an Ultimate Fighter winner, I mean, he doesn't he doesn't have a role in the promotion anymore. He's not really a gatekeeper per se. He's not a prospect. He's not like a big name guy. And they're signing so many fighters now. I hate to say it, you gotta get rid of you might have to get rid of a guy like a Mac Danzig, or like a Cody McKenzie or a Roger Bowling, that just guys that don't have roles in the UFC that are stuck in the perpetual like mid or lower tier. I say that as far as analysis goes. It's not like I don't personally enjoy seeing people lose their jobs or anything like that. But from an analytical perspective, I mean, he just doesn't add much. I don't understand his role in the UFC. At least Lozon, generally, he's an action fighter. You can say that. He's probably never going to fight for a title, but you can generally get a good fight out of him. I think Lozon should get like the winner of Miles Jury versus Diego Sanchez next. Other guys he can fight would be, there's another guy from Alliance, that the guy who won Tough Smash, like Norman Park, maybe something like that too. Wouldn't be too bad. And with Danzig, if he does stay, more lower to mid-tier guys of the division. Counter to prelims, Ryan LaFleur beat Court McGee by unanimous decision. I really like Ryan LaFleur's scrambling ability, man. When that guy's on the ground, he knows how to get a butterfly guard or something and just elevate guys. Or when a guy gets a takedown, he rolls with the momentum to scramble out. Really like his scrambling ability. I like Ryan LaFleur as a prospect. He's definitely one of those, dare I say, a dark horse prospect. Just one of those guys that a lot of people don't really know, but is pretty solid. Stand-up's not too bad. He has some good knees. His punches didn't look too bad here, too. He was good at using range here. And his wrestling and scrambling's good as well. I think he needs to step up in competition. I think he's 3-0 in the UFC now. Maybe the winner of Tarek Safdien versus Hung Yi Lim. John Hathaway would be another guy he can fight. I'd like to see him fight like a Dong Hyun Kim, because Dong Hyun Kim generally can out-grapple fighters and out-grind them. Ryan LaFleur is not a guy you can generally grind on. I mean, he's a good wrestler and a good grappler himself. So, I would actually be pretty interested in seeing LaFleur versus Stun Gun, to be perfectly honest with you. Next, and with Court McGee, I mean, this guy is just a perpetual mid-tier fighter. He's always in the fight, always going to make his opponent work for the whole 15 minutes. Probably never going to be a top 10 guy. But like I said, he serves a role in the UFC as something of a gatekeeper. That's the thing. Next fight after that, Edson Barboza beat Danny Castillo by majority decision. 2 scorecards of 29-28 and 1 scorecard of 28-28. Even I personally gave that first round to Danny Castillo 10-8. That was pretty definition 10-8, to be honest with you. There is the argument that Edson Barboza got the second round 10-8 as well. Danny Castillo really wasn't doing much. And Barboza, did he drop him or wobble him? I forgot. But I did like some things I liked from Barboza, but one thing I don't like with Barboza is the guy, he backs up with his hands down a lot. And dude, this guy catches right hands like a lot. I was like, Danny Garcia dropped him with the right hand. Jamie Varner was pretty much beating him by just right hands. I mean, he takes power right hands a lot. Otherwise, his kicks are amazing. I mean, this guy, head, body, whether it's like spinning back kick or just like regular roundhouse kick to the body, and of course his leg kicks, amazing. I did like his grappling though. His takedown defense. I was really happy to see him pretty much stuff all of almost all of Danny Castillo's takedowns. Even in the third round, went for his own. I did like that Barboza. I mean, he went for a triangle choke. It was really loose. And that was in the first round. That's why maybe there's an argument that Danny Castillo didn't get a 10-8 first round, because Barboza was going for some things. He was punching from the bottom too. I still gave Castillo a 10-8 personally, but not disappointed with this call. I kind of expected this call to happen for Barboza to win. But he also went for a leg lock, what Barboza did. And the anaconda choke, or the Darce choke he went for as well, was pretty good. So he's definitely making a very concerted effort to improve his grappling. Takedown defense looked good. He went for some offensive submissions. So that's definitely something very positive to see from Barboza. He's an exciting fighter, dude. Really exciting prospect in the division. I think he's gonna, he's still gonna have problems with guys with, like Castillo, is good enough stand up, but he's not like some great boxer or anything like that. And he dropped Barboza and tagged him a couple times actually. So I think that's gonna come back to haunt Barboza in the future. But as of right now, who he should fight, I mean, probably step up in competition. Castillo's one of those guys that's he can wrestle his way to victory if need be. This has happened before with Castillo though, against Michael Johnson, where he wins the first round very strongly and just loses the fight like the next rounds after that. He got knocked out by Michael Johnson in like the second round. And this fight, I mean, Castillo just looked like, he didn't offer much at the next 2 rounds. He really looked like he punched himself out. As far as Barboza, who should fight next, if you want to give him a pretty big step up, you could give him the winner of Adriano Martins versus Donald Cerrone. Someone else on this card that's coming off one, Bobby Green, coming off a good win over Pat Healy. Barboza versus Bobby Green wouldn't be too bad of a fight between two prospects. Who else is there? Trying to think who's fighting who right now. That's coming off a win. So, yeah, I guess those guys at this time. I'm just trying to think who's coming off a win right now, though. That'd be a really appropriate step up for Barboza. Otherwise, with Danny Castillo, just more lower to mid-tier guys at the division for him. Yeah, next fight off that, Bobby Green beat Pat Healy by unanimous decision. Really surprised by this. I expected Pat Healy to grind his way to victory, and it didn't happen. Bobby Green definitely used his superior speed to win this, and he's a good wrestler himself. So he didn't allow himself to stay on the ground. He scrambled well back to his feet, or just defended takedowns well. So, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty solid win for Green. And like I said, maybe he can get like a Barboza next. I'm curious to see how it'd do against someone like a Gleison Tebow or something like that, if he can handle that. He could rematch him with James Krause, because I don't know how that fight would have gone. But yeah, Bobby Green is one of those guys that has been greatly surprising me, because he's beating grinders. I mean, he's beat Jacob Volkman, he beat Pat Healy, guys that are usually like the tough outs in the division. Bobby Green is beating, so I honestly didn't expect him to do this well in the UFC. And he's still, I think, like 28, 29 or something like that. He's still something of... I mean, he has a lot of fights. I don't really know if you can call him a prospect. Something of an up-and-comer, though. I mean, definitely one of the more surprising guys that's doing well from Strikeforce to the UFC. I didn't expect him to do this well and beat the guys that he has beaten. So, good for him. Yeah, and with Pat Healy, just more mid to lower tier guys for him, I guess. Yeah. Or another one, actually, Bobby Green versus the winner of Jim Miller versus Fabricio Camoes. I think that'd be pretty good. Even give Barboza that fight, too, Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad, actually. Okay, next round that, Zach Mikowski beat Scott Jorgensen by unanimous decision. Jorgensen, I mean, man, that guy had no answer for Mikowski's left hand. Some really fun scrambling in this fight, too. Just some of the wrestling and scrambling that was going on. Awesome stuff. I really like Zach Mikowski. I didn't pick him to win, but, he definitely has top 10 potential. Stand-up's pretty solid. His wrestling and scrambling ability are really good. And he's in the right weight class, too, Took the final short notice. Didn't seem... I mean, the announcers were saying he's fading a bit. I didn't particularly notice it. He didn't look that bad. With him, I mean, he can fight like a Dustin Ortiz. Who else is in flyweight that he could fight? Jeez, I'm thinking like, yeah, Dustin Ortiz. Can't give him too big of a step up, though. I wouldn't say like Pickett McCall, because that doesn't make much sense to me. Usually you want to match winners with winners. I mean, you could give Mikowski Tim Elliott, even though Tim Elliott's coming off a loss. Mikowski versus Baga Utinov actually wouldn't be too bad, especially as a number one contender fight. Just considering how thin flyweight is, it's not the worst. Definitely not the worst fight you can do, and I think that'd be a pretty fun fight, actually. But yeah, and then Scott Jorgensen, I mean, just more lower to mid-tier guys at the division, I guess, coming off losses. You got like Daryl Montague, you can fight him. Darren Yanoyama, I guess, and just guys like that. Okay, next fight after that, Sam Sapp beat Cody McKenzie by unanimous decision. Some very interesting things about McKenzie that didn't have too much to do with the fight. One, he's wearing basketball shorts during this fight. I didn't notice it. The referee, I think it was either Big John or Herdine, ripped off the price tag from the basketball shorts. And I think he forgot his mouthpiece too. He had to buy a new mouthpiece. So yeah, and there was some strange behavior from him after the fight. Apparently he was drinking a little after the fight and whatnot. So yeah, gonna be honest with you, Kevin McKenzie is a character, but he is just, I never felt he belonged in the UFC. And quite honestly, as a fighter, I think being in the UFC actually hindered him more than helped him. Because the problem with Cody McKenzie is that if he can't get the guillotine, unless it's like Leonard Garcia or something like that, he generally can't win in the UFC. That's the thing. I mean, he has to rely on it because most guys can outstrike Cody McKenzie. Marcus Levisher, who's not with the UFC anymore, honestly, he's a good wrestler, isn't the best striker, was beating McKenzie up on the feet. I mean, just most guys can beat McKenzie up on the feet. That's the thing. And so McKenzie is just like forced to rely on a guillotine to win fights. Most guys can out-grapple him. There's more experienced grapplers, Eve Edwards, I think, beat him by, rear naked choke or something like that. Forgot what Brazilian guy got a win over McKenzie as well. Just forgot his name. He's not in the UFC anymore. But, this guy's striking somewhat improved. It's a very small improvement, He shouldn't be fighting people of this level because he can't really test out what he's learned in the gym into the cage because these guys are so superior. Like, how are you going to test their striking on a Chad Mendes, Eve Edwards, Sam Stout? It's not going to happen. These guys are better strikers. They've been doing it longer and at a higher level. A lot longer than Cody McKenzie's been doing it. That's why I think being in the UFC actually helps him, hinders him as far as him being a prospect. Because he's fighting too high a level of competition and he doesn't have the experience to really be able to hang or learn. The difference in skill, it's going to be hard for him to learn too and get better. Wouldn't surprise me if McKenzie's cut after this because Dana White was embarrassed by this, by the basketball shorts thing, thought it was kind of amateur hour. Sam Stout, on the other hand, perpetual. I always say this about Sam Stout. There's guys like him, Matt Wyman, Thiago Tavares, just perpetual mid. I mean, they are just stuck in mid-tier purgatory. They can beat certain guys in the mid-tier, and then they will lose to guys in the mid-tier. So, yeah, Sam Stout, just more mid-tier guys and lightweight for him. Next round, that Abel Trujillo beat Roger Bowling by TKO in the second round. Man, Trujillo just had Bowling's number in this fight. It was just all Trujillo, stand up. I think he took him down too. Beating him up pretty bad. Roger Bowling's probably cut from the UFC after this. His defense just isn't very good. And Trujillo's performance was just solid. I mean, he'd have Bowling against the cage. He'd get a striking combination on him. Go for transition takedown before Bowling couldn't even counter punch. So I liked what I saw from Trujillo here actually. Just more lower to mid tier guys for him. He definitely fought Habib Nurmagomedov way too soon in his tenure in the UFC. He definitely should be fighting more just like lower tier, mid tier guys. Get some more experience before fighting like a guy like that. And finally, Alp Oskalik beat Darren Uyenoyama by split decision. You know, I don't know what to say about this fight. It's just, Uyenoyama, he would like pull guard a lot of times, work from the bottom. I think he actually at times did a lot more damage than Alp did while on top. But for the most part, he couldn't really get anything too threatening from the bottom. Alp, good wrestler. His hands didn't look too bad in this fight as well. But it's he's not one of those guys that like super impressed me. Like he's not one of those prospects like, yeah, wow, this guy's gonna get a title shot soon or something like that, or he's gonna be a top 10 guy. He's not a guy I really see getting that far. Never know. Just more lower to mid tier guys of the division for him. Y'all actually has 2 losses in a row now to Benavides and now to Alp. So I don't know if he gets cut. Like I said, like to me, it's always like, what role does he play? And granted, like the UFC does need more. They're putting out more cards, so they still need to keep a certain number of fighters. But they're signing a lot of new guys as well. So it's I don't know if he gets cut or not. It's 2 losses in a row. He's like in his mid-30s. I think he's like 34. Might stay in the UFC for one more fight, but it's really tough to say. Okay, that's it for my post-fight analysis for UFC on Fox 9. If you have any comments, just leave them below. And that's it for MMA for you. Thank you guys very much.